Hello everyone, I'm Becky Goldsmith with Piece of Cake, and I have been a quilter for more than 35 years, and I learned something new just this last week about how to layer a quilt before you baste it. I just finished the Blooming Joy top, and this quilt top measures like 86 by 86. It's big. And I knew that my typical way of layering and basting this quilt on my big dining room table was going to be hard because all the pieces are just so big. And I thought to myself, well, it fits on my design wall. What if I put the layers together there? So this is how I did it. I first used the lint roller on my design wall to make it clean because it really needed it. So there is my very clean design wall. The first thing I did was put my quilt back wrong side against the design wall. I always wash my fabric in the washer and dry it in the dryer so it has been shrunk, and it also doesn't have any sizings or anything on it, so the fabric itself is a little bit grippy. And my design wall has batting on it. I started in the upper left-hand corner and followed the line of the ceiling across to the right. And I smoothed the fabric down below as I went, just as far as I could reach when I was on the step ladder. When I reached the end of where I could reach, I moved the step ladder. Now, at the top, I put straight pins into my design wall, and I was very aware of where the selvage edge of this wide backing is on the left because I lined it up with the straight edge of my design wall on the left. So I got the whole thing up and smoothed it, and this fabric, as you can see on the right, there's more fabric over there than I needed, so I sort of folded it over and made it stay in place. Next, I put my batting on the wall. This is a Quilter's Dream Request Weight bat, and I moved it in, an inch or two at the top and the left side from the edge of the fabric. So I wanted a little more fabric around the outer edges, and I was very careful as I put this batting up not to stretch it. I did use pins again at the top and on the sides just to hold it in place, and where there were wrinkles, I patted them out. And I also, as I went, if I needed to, it's like I would lift the bat a little bit to help it settle back in place without having to stretch it to make it flat. That's the batting I use. It's the Quilter's Dream Request Weight, and this is a queen size bat. And honestly, this was one of the reasons why I needed to do this on the design wall, because my quilt is only, like 6 inches narrower than the narrowest width of the bat. And I knew getting this situated right on my table, it was just going to be a problem. So I didn't want to do that. Next, I took the quilt top and positioned it in place on top of the batting. Now, normally I'd be doing this flat on my table with the edges hanging off. So this is really great because I can see that everything's going to fit. It was perfect. And I also pre-washed all the fabric in my quilt top, so it pretty much sticks where I put it when I've got it up on the wall like this. And I was very careful not to stretch it out of shape, to get it all up there right. And I put straight pins along the top and along the outer edges into the design wall until I was sure I had everything where I wanted it. Now, here's the thing. Some of you are looking at this and maybe assuming that I'm spray basting. I'm not. I hate spray basting. I do not want to add any chemicals into the batting. I don't care if they say it washes out. I don't believe it and I don't trust it. So this is probably about the way you might do it if you were spray basting, except I'm not spray basting. I am just assembling these layers on the wall. And I've never done it this way before. I don't know why. Okay, So I took my good shears and I trimmed away the excess backing and batting along the base where it was pooling up on the floor, and I left 4 or 5 inches down there. That's all I needed. And I also trimmed away the fabric on the right side, again leaving about 4 to 5 inches of backing and batting beyond the outer edges of the quilt top. The straight pins that I had pointed directly into the design wall, I carefully went across the bottom and got my fingers behind and took those pins out and turned them to the side. I did the same thing on the left and right sides. I didn't loosen the quilt from the wall. I just very carefully pinned the 3 layers together with straight pins. And then I did it across the top as well, and it was okay. I could get behind there without the quilt peeling off the wall while I was doing it. And then I took the whole thing carefully off the wall, took it into my dining room table and laid it flat. It's perfect. It was just perfect for basting because I didn't have to fight with getting everything exactly layered in place. And this is a big, heavy quilt sandwich. I could not believe how much easier this was than the way I would normally do it. Now, this is a quilt that I knew was going to take more than a day for me to get it basted because I was running out of daylight on this particular day. And I have a cat, an oh so helpful cat named Jim, and I did not want Jim doing any helping on top of the quilt. So, to protect the quilt from Jim and my other cat, I very carefully folded up the parts of the quilt that were hanging low on either side, and I covered the whole thing with a vinyl-topped tablecloth. And this protected the quilt top until I was able to get it all the way basted. And I did do about half the basting on this quilt. My husband Steve, you'll see in a minute, helped me with the other half. So I thread baste and I run my line of basting stitches 6 to 7 inches apart. I'm using a heavyweight thread. That is a 40 weight hand quilting thread. And I'm using the longer Roxanne's basting needles. I really like those needles for basting. There are other needles that are also good, but this is typically the one I pick up. And there's Steve basting. Now, we both were able to run long lines of basting all the way across from one side of the quilt to the other. If you've got a waxed hand quilting thread, it tends not to get into knots as you're dealing with that long of a thread. So we thread basted, great old big stitches in a grid, going in one direction and then the other. I don't do diagonal grid lines. You're welcome to if you want, but I do not. At the outer edges, I always trim the batting about 1 inch beyond the edge of the quilt top, and then I trim the backing about 1 inch beyond that, and I fold the fabric, that excess backing fabric, over the exposed batting and baste it in place. And you'll also notice that the very edge of the quilt top is basted down so it doesn't move, and this flap of backing fabric over the batting, it really is a good way to handle the edges because it makes them neat and tidy. The backing doesn't shred, the quilt top doesn't stretch. I think even on smaller quilts, I'm going to continue to baste this way on my design wall because it was so much easier to handle it for the rest of the process rather than taping the quilt back to the table and trying to center the batting and then centering the quilt on top of it. This was just really easy. Let me say that I don't know how it would work with unwashed fabric. I don't know how it would work with a non-cotton bat. But if you wash your fabric and you're using a cotton batting, I recommend this. So, I hope you find this helpful. Thank you for watching, and may you have many happy stitches.